Hello, this is part two of the overall tutorial where our goal is to make a area on the map that, or not area on the map. Basically, if you click on the map, you can add a point of interest and have that save. You know, nice project to do just to show the ins and outs of QGroundControl. And obviously, we're not going to cover everything, but you know, it might be good. A good project to get started with, kind of learn how to do stuff. So yeah, in this specific video, we're gonna go over how to add a class like in C++ that you can call and access via QML. And yeah, that's basically it. So if you go to just like the directories here and you go to like the source directory, you'll see that there's a ton of folders here, basically, that each folder is, you know, it has stuff for a different purpose, and things are naturally organized like that. And something I forgot to mention in the last tutorial is that we're just like modifying the code directly, but there's also this like custom example up here like that you can actually use to create custom code as well. I personally don't like it, and I don't ever use it. And like a lot of the projects that I work on, they just modify the code directly because it's way easier. And so like personally, I don't recommend using it unless you're like doing something specific that you want your code to be applicable to like multiple different versions of QGroundControl. Like there's reasons to use this custom stuff, and there's even like a tutorial for it. Like if you go to QGroundControl custom, like in this custom builds, like there's ways to go about like using this, but I've had issues with it in the past, so I usually just steer clear of it. And I think when you're just starting out, it's already kind of a lot to learn how to use Qt and, you know, learn about where everything is in QGroundControl and make modifications. Adding that custom thing on top of it makes it more difficult, in my opinion. So I think if you are to do that, you should do it after you actually learn the basics. So now that we got that out of the way, I actually, like outside of this, I kind of already started making the files just to make it easier for us. And also because things change in the master version of QGroundControl when compared to the latest stable. So I had to kind of like look and see how it's done in the master version. So like I created, basically what you would have to do is create two files, like, you know, POI manager.h, POI manager.cc. The CC is basically empty except for this include. But yeah, I did a pragma once, included QObject, because basically in Qt, all the like a lot of the C++ stuff is overridden, like, or not overridden, but like Qt has their own implementations of a lot of like Qt stuff, because the whole idea is, you know, Qt is cross-platform compatible. So a lot of this stuff exists in their own implementation so that it works on multiple platforms. I think there's other reasons too. Like some things might be slightly modified to work better with Qt, but like as an example, vector, right? You see like Qt has their own, Qt has their own implementation of the standard, of like most of the standard library. Like they have vectors, they have unordered lists, they have everything, you know? So if you ever need to use anything from the standard library, instead of doing that, you should look to see if Qt has their own implementation, because your solution will work in Qt's environment better. Now QObject is a little bit special, where basically most classes inherit from QObject. I think almost every object in some way inherits from QObject, unless it's inheriting from a different Qt type. Like even things that, you know, something might inherit from an existing class in QGroundControl, but that existing class will inherit from QObject. When you declare a QObject, you have to add this QObject right here, like before the public and private. And I'm not actually sure why you need to do that. I just know you need to, and that's, you know, something you got to do. And then there's public and private here. Let's say we wanted to like, let's just create something basic right now. Let's create like a function to be called, like nothing special, right? So, oh, and sorry, I'm kind of going off topic. I didn't show the CMake stuff. So when I created this tutorial directory with these two things in that, there's a CMake list in the src folder, and we had to, all we had to do was add subdirectory tutorial so that our CMake would actually look in this folder. And then for this CMake list, it might not be necessarily like correct for everything we want to do, but like literally all I did, and like I do this for a lot of things because like, you know, you can't be expected to just know how to do everything from the get-go, right? I looked at how it was already implemented on, I believe, wherever multi-vehicle manager is. So, oh yeah, I looked in the vehicle implementation, and I looked at that CMake list right here, and I basically just modified it so that it used what I was using. So like, you know, the target sources I modified so it uses POI manager, and everything else is basically the same except for these add subdirectories that are not there. And I know that if like, depending on what like area of Qt you're using, you'll have to like modify this find package. If you're on the latest stable release, which is still under 5.15.2 right now, the way you go about doing this is not actually through CMake. It's through something called QMake, and that's different. And I could show that in the future, but like I figured that if I'm gonna make a tutorial, I might as well make it on the newest stuff because, you know, eventually everything will be on this new version of QGroundControl. But like if you ever want to implement it for older version of QGroundControl, you do it through QMake, which has its own type of file. I believe it's like a QRC file or something along those lines. But yeah, this or no, it's a .pro file, I think. But still, this is the way that it's currently being done. So yeah, now we have our class. Let's make a basic function to just call it, just to show you like how you would access stuff from your class. So I'm gonna first show like how you would do it the wrong way, and then I'll show you how you actually can do it the correct way. First, let's actually check to see if this class is accessible in the first place, because we created this class, but how are you actually gonna like get it from? Oh yeah, I'm showing the right way right now. I'll show you the wrong way of doing stuff soon, but like how can you actually get this accessible to other places, right? Well, I'm actually like I have experience with older QGroundControl, so I'm not sure how it's done now. So let's take a look. Multi-vehicle manager. Let's see where this is actually created. New multi. Oops. So that's not how it's done, but oh, there's a file called QGroundControl QML global, and I'm assuming that this file's purpose is to make things accessible to QML. Yeah, so Plan Master Controller also has an instance of it, but I don't think that's what we need because, yeah. Okay, so I think the QML global is what we need. Now, you might notice that there is a lot of Q properties. Now, Q properties are basically, they're like definitions that you got to add to make your thing accessible to Qt or to QML. If you don't have if something isn't a property or a Q invocable, it's most likely not going to be accessible to QML, and thus you would never be able to access it from the front end. Basically, it's the way for the front end and the back end to communicate with each other. That's the best way I can describe it. You might notice like this stuff isn't included. It's like predefined. Not actually sure why they do it that way, to be honest. But who are we to change it? So like, let's just class POI manager. Oops. There we go. And I believe multi-vehicle manager is created here. So in the private area, it's here. So let's create our own. So POI manager. Nice. And as you can see, like, we're just doing it the exact same way that everything else is done, which, you know, you'll find that when you work on a lot of open source projects or just projects in general, you should, like, a lot of times things are already done a certain way. So, you know, shouldn't necessarily change them. So let's just go, oops, actually I just took a screenshot. I did not mean to do that. Let's make a Q property here. Q property. And, oh wait, no, it wouldn't be here. I started going in autopilot mode. Believe, let's just like go to, let's see how global palette does it. Oh yeah, it's down here. Okay, so things aren't really organized that much. Okay, maybe global palette wasn't a good one to base it on. Let's just say how multi-vehicle manager is done, because that's a good reference for things. Okay, so I think now, like, with the new implementation of Qt, they added this Q mock include, which is basically how you can include other areas to be accessible via QML. I don't have a lot of experience with it because this is my first time learning about it. But basically, I believe it's for like forward declaration stuff. And if we, I believe I actually pulled it up before because I was looking at it. Oh yeah, right here. The QMock include macro can be used within or outside a class, and it tells the meta object compiler to add an include. So I guess it's a way to like actually include the stuff, but like yeah, I don't really get it because like you're also including it here, but yeah, I have to look more into that. But yeah, let's add POI manager to the QMock include. Let's see how multi-vehicle. Oh yeah, and a Q property is still defined here. I just couldn't find them, but let's add our own property for it. So Q property. And really make sure that like when you're doing this, you're spelling things correctly, because when you mess up a Q property, it's sometimes it's kind of hard to debug. So yeah, I believe I made it the same way. Now, when you're like referencing classes, like, or pointers, like class pointers, or object pointers, I guess. When you're referencing those, you basically just make them constant and you add a read to them. But like if it's like a variable or something like that, you could also add like a write, like as an example, this coordinate flight map position, there's a write because that allows the in QML to modify it, and then that's basically tied to this the setter right here. So yeah, Q properties are kind of hard to grasp, but basically like the first part is like the actual like, well, this first area is like the type, so like int is an example. The second is like the name, and then like read basically means like, okay, like we're able to read this, and then that points, and then this is like the name of a getter basically. So like flight map position is a getter. So if we look down, it's this right here. This is the getter for flight map position. So the accessor. and then write, and then this is the setter or the mutator, set flight map position. And then this special one, notify, which doesn't, for like object pointers, you don't have this, but like for like normal types, you do. Notify is basically a signal, and that is like, let's see where that is. That's down here, defined under signals. And as you could see, it looks like a class, but it's actually a signal. And what it does is whenever this signal is emitted, because signals have a special thing called like emitting and stuff. Whenever it's emitted, QML knows that it changes, and then QML will update. If you don't have a signal for something that updates, then like your front end will have no idea that it changes. That being said, for like things like objects that are Q properties, you don't have a signal with them because they don't work the same way. So for this, you wouldn't have a signal for anything changing, because like what would change would be like the actual address of the pointer, and that doesn't change under normal circumstances. So there would be no reason to have like a notify for this. Yeah, hopefully what I said makes sense, because like, yeah, so some of the stuff can be kind of a lot. So yeah, we don't have our accessor or mutator yet, so if we compile this, it will actually not work. Like, let's just see what errors it throws me, because it's probably gonna throw me some useful ones, maybe. We'll see. But I know what's wrong. Basically, we haven't added accessor or mutator, so let's wait for this to compile. I'll pause the video just so it's faster. Okay, yeah, so class QGroundControl QML global has no member named POI manager. Yeah, so you look at this and you're like, oh, I have no idea where this error is, and that's because like it's not very clear sometimes when you mess up your Q property stuff, and you'll see that it's in this mock function. Basically Q property does a lot of stuff behind the scenes, and it's basically a macro, right? So it's doing stuff behind the scenes and generating code for you. That's the best way I can kind of put it. It's not like technically generating it. It's more like just a macro, but still, like, it's a macro. And if you mess it up, then it'll throw you an error that's kind of not really understandable. But we know that if you make a Q property, you have to have these things actually exist, or you're going to run into issues. So let's see. So let's make our accessor, and this is in the public area of the class. So POI manager. Let's see if I actually named it correctly. Oops, POI manager, let's see. Cool, I did. So we're returning the address of POI manager, which I believe you do. Actually, you don't. I am wrong, because it's already a pointer. If it wasn't a pointer, then you return the address to it based on how we define things. Just for the sake of it, let's like go and put it over here. So yeah, now our accessor's there, but we need our well, actually we don't need any mutator because there's no write here. So if I said we need a mutator, I actually was misspeaking. I think that's good enough. I believe also well, these QMock includes are good. Let's see why I like stuff like multi-vehicle managers and the CC. Oh, okay. So when QGroundControl QML global is created, the instances of the classes are also created, which, we initialized POI manager as null pointer, right? So if we were to run this, POI manager would stay null pointer because nothing's actually nothing's initializing it. So we could go here and see the order that I did it. Okay, after global palette, so. We'll set that to POI manager instance, which I don't believe we actually set instance yet, so we need to do that. But let's see if that works. I believe we also have to include POI manager, so yeah, so. There we go. Yeah, I believe that's it. So if we are to compile this, I believe it's going to fail because we did not add anything called instance on POI manager yet. And some of this stuff is actually like the way that we're doing it is new to the new version of Qt. So if you are doing this on the recent stable or an older version, you will definitely have to look and see how it's done and change what you're doing because it'll be completely different. Like I believe, well, actually I don't believe, I know that in older QGroundControl, they had something called QGC Toolbox, and that basically controlled when things like that basically was like the thing that you would access to get to any class, but that was completely rewritten. It's way better now because you don't have to go through as much stuff to actually access stuff. But yeah, instance is not a member of POI manager, so I was correct. How does multi-vehicle manager do it? Oh, it's just some static like this. You know what? We're just going to copy that. Let's just do the old copy of stuff. It's in public, so. Oh, so every class has like its own instance now, I believe. Oh, this Q application static, which is also a new thing, I think. Q application static. Okay, well, I guess there's this Q application static, which is also created to create static versions of classes, I believe. Yeah, so we'll need to create Q application static. How fun. That's in the CC file, so. We'll call it POI manager instance. Okay. Yeah, I was just checking to see if we had to do anything else, but I don't think so. We just have to, well, anything else related to like the H or to the header file. But if we go here, yeah, I'm just going to copy this. This is something I haven't done before because it's like specific to the newest QGroundControl version. But yeah, we're just going to make it so that basically whenever this instance is called, it will use this application static of the instance. I haven't ever actually read this, but basically my assumption is that this creates like some global static that is already basically Qt creates like an application static and names it this. So, oh yeah, return POI manager instance like this. Let's see if that worked or if we forgot anything else. I think we forgot to include this. Let's see if that works. I could have done everything in advance and just recorded a video of it, but I think it's better for me to kind of struggle through it and show you my process of figuring stuff out as well, because, you know, kind of shows like, you know, you're never going to know everything off the bat, you know. There's certain things you're just going to have to look at how it's already done, and if it's not already done, you're going to have to look through documentation and figure it out, you know. But yeah, that compiled correctly. And now POI manager should be created properly. So yeah, let's just go in. I know, like originally I mentioned, like I was going to do it the wrong way first and then show you the right way of doing it. Let's do that soon, but I just wanted to I want to make sure that this is actually accessible, right? Now, I already showed how to like find things in QGroundControl, or kind of a way to do it, but like there are many other ways to do it. Like this, at first, like I didn't know where like the map was created. I'm like, oh, like where's this map created? There's nothing you can really reference at this map to figure it out. I mean, I guess there is now, because you could look at this on-press QML, but let's pretend that doesn't exist, right? You'd be like, oh, where is this created? Well, the type of it's a map, right? So we can look at this source area and be like, oh, is anything here a map? And you see, oh, there's flight map. Okay, well, there's flightmap.qml and mapscale.qml. If we click flightmap.qml, oh, it's a map, and then you could like look at it and see if it's like the thing you're looking for. I know it is, but like even without that, you could like be like Qt QML map, and then you see this map type, and you're like, oh, okay, well, where are the maps? So we'll look at map and only include QML, right? And you see that there's flyview, which creates this flyview map.qml. And then you see in flight map.qml, there's map, and plan view.qml, it calls flight map. So like, I mean, this offline map editor, there's that stuff too. So you kind of can use like the process of elimination to figure out where things are and where they're created. That's like the easy part, is figuring out where they are. The hard part is actually, you know, creating your own stuff. But once you do figure out where it is, you know, you can add stuff. So let's real quickly try to see if if we have our class is accessible, right? So let's do under here, property var, let's just call it POI manager. So we're basically creating an instance of the property. And that equals QGroundControl POI manager. I believe we have it under that name. If we go to QGroundControl QML global, let's see if that was actually the name we added. You know, before running, we should always double check. Yeah, so that's the way we spelled it. So let's see if this throws us an error. And I know flight map is actually initialized on basically in the very start screen, so you don't have to click on anything. After you run the program, you should immediately know if it is an error or not. Oh, and it isn't. Okay, cool. just for the sake of showing you, let's say that I'm trying to do something that wasn't called again. So like, blah, 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 right? Like we know that that never existed. So if we were to run this code, you'll probably see that it'll like throw you an error because it doesn't exist. I guess it didn't. Okay. Well, that surprises me actually. I thought it'll throw you an error if it's not accessible. Interesting. Well, if you create properties that are bad, I guess it won't throw you an error, and that kind of sucks because it makes it even harder to debug. But let's say that we try to use this. So if we see this, there's like a multi-point touch area here, and that's unpressed. It actually, when you press it, it'll give you that unpressed. I think somebody. Well, let's see. Unpressed. Oh yeah, it's up here. Unpressed. It'll give you that message. Let's just POI manager dot do something. I know this will throw you an error now if you try pressing something. Because we still have it set to blah blah blah, and also that function doesn't exist. So I click here. Oh yeah, it'll tell me cannot call method do something of undefined. So yeah, POI manager is undefined, or because it's QGroundControl blah blah blah. Now if we set it to POI manager, let's hope that it actually worked. If not, I'll pause the video and figure out what the problem is. But the error message, it's still going to say, it'll give you an error message because that function doesn't exist, but it's probably going to be a different error message. Yeah, you see the error message now is different. Before it was like cannot call do something of undefined. Now it's property do something of object POI manager, and then it gives you the actual object address is not a function. This tells me that POI manager is created and we're accessing it, but whatever we're calling is not a function. So now I'll show you the wrong way of doing this. So you're like, you probably like, or when I was originally doing Qt stuff, I didn't realize this until I did some research, but like, and this was like a while ago, like maybe a year or more, long time ago. But let's create like a function, right? Let's just, okay, we'll use QString. So let's just include QString. We'll say QString do something. And we'll just return we did something. Oh, and I showed you how to like log things when you're in QML and you're like calling something, you do console.log. In Qt, you can do QDebug, doing something. There's also QWarning and QCritical and a couple others, but I usually use QDebug. And then QGroundControl is your own debugging that I'll show eventually, but for now, like, let's just do something very simple, right? Well, let's actually make this even simpler. Let's just go like, oh, we don't need the return. Let's just do void, do something. Let's just have it print something out. This is not going to work, and I will tell you why soon. Let's just wait for this to compile. Okay, so yeah, sorry, I was waiting for it to compile and it just finally did. And I clicked on something, but like if you click on it, you'll see that it says property do something object POI manager is not a function. So exact same error. And you might be confused because you might think, oh, but do something's in POI manager. Why is QML not recognizing it as an object? The reason is because you haven't set a property for it. So you just go oops. I always do that because new keyboard, but Q property. And you used to like have to set Q properties like under public, I think. I'm not actually sure, but like QGroundControl recently, they're setting their properties above everything, so I'm doing that too. It's kind of more readable. So let's not set a property for this. I'll show invocable. So if you have a function, but it's not necessarily like a variable that you want to access, then you just do QInvocable before it. And that'll basically tell Qt that this should be called by QML. And if something's invocable, it has to be called QInvocable in the actual header file. Let's actually do this properly. So QInvocable void do something, and then we'll add void. You know what? Copilot can go away because I don't want it. POI manager do something, right? Then let's just do that. Now wait for it to compile. I'll pause again just so it's faster. Okay, so now it compiled. If I click on it, doing something. So now that's accessible. Now I'll show how to like access a variable, right? So let's say that we have this QString. One sec. Let me plug in my my keyboard because there was some lag there because my keyboard's wireless and I think it's running out of battery. So give me a sec. Okay, I'm back. Sorry about that. So let's say we have a QString and let's just call it like thing, right? And we'll just say hi to make a Q property so that you can access that. Also, just for the sake of making it better, maybe have an underscore here if you like certain notations. You might put like an M there, but like to access this Q property, you just do Q property and then Q string thing, and then read thing, write set thing, and then notify thing changed. Now if you don't want this to be changed, you wouldn't add this right here, and you'd probably add constant instead. Basically the reason that we have to set these properties in the first place is because I think it's like due to like making things more performant, if like you don't want everything to be changeable via like the front end, and like basically I don't know, I think there's performance reasons for it and other stuff too. Like if you ever use like React or something like that, I believe or like any other front end thing, it's kind of similar. QML has its own niche, like its own things, but like I don't know, it's just the way that a lot of front end stuff is done. But yeah, this should work. We just need to add our accessors and mutators. So QString thing constant return thing, and then void set thing think that's all you need. Oh wait, we forgot something. So we have to add another thing here, which is signals. Signal. Forgot if there was an S at the end or not. And then just do that. And then whenever we set something, we do emit thing changed. I think that's the right way to do it, but only the compiler will tell us that. I'll pause the video real quickly. Give me a sec. Cool, so the program compiled correctly, but we haven't actually done anything with this QString yet, so let's do that. So let's just close out of this and go back to our flight map. For now, let's just print what thing is. Console.log POI manager.thing. That's how you would access something that is a property. If we run this again, we only changed QML that time, so it's going to be faster to build. We go to application output, and then we click here. Thing has been printed, because thing is high, I think. Yeah. So, yeah, that's the basics of how to like access parts of a class or call a function from a class. Now let's actually make something that is useful. So the first thing I want to do is thinking about the best way to do this. Give me one second. Let me actually think about how we were gonna do this, because like we have to basically translate our mouse position to, because like our end goal right now, which I don't know if I mentioned in this video, is to basically make it so if you press here, you have the ability to add like a point of interest or POI. This multi-point touch area might not be the best area to do it, but we'll see, because we have to translate the X and Y on the screen to actual coordinates. Let's see how we would do that. Multi-point touch area. Let's see if map has any. Yeah, give me one sec. I had to think about this. I'm going to pause the video and think about this a little bit. Okay, so what I was doing was I was looking at the documentation, and I see that there's this 2-coordinate method on map. So what I'm thinking is we got the X and the Y of this touch point. So, and then the coordinate takes in Q point F, which is, I believe, let's like take a look at Q point F. Well, that didn't work. Q point F. Okay. Actually, we need Q. I believe these are the same. Okay, so it takes in Q point F, but probably a QML point will be good enough for that. So qt dot, let's see how it did it. Oh, qt dot points. Let's just use the X and Y's of this. So I think that's how we would do it. So let's actually do let chord equal, let's see what the name of this is. I believe it's just map. Oh yeah, it's underscore map. So map dot to coordinates, and then just copy paste this. Oh, and I just realized that's the exact way they call this map clicked area right here, which is a signal. So just did something that was already done, but yeah. Let's just like log this just to see if it works. Let's let it compile. And yeah, it's giving the actual coordinate of the area that I'm pressing, which is kind of cool. So we want Chicago. I think that's Chicago. So that's nice. Why? So you may ask why I'm doing that. It's because I want to actually be able to store this coordinate in POI Manager. Right now, like before I add any like prompts to actually save a point, I'm just going to make it so that whenever you press on the map, it creates a point. Just, you know, sometimes it's easier to make this simple thing and then basically build on top of it later. So let's remove this stuff. Let's also remove this, do something, this thing, and then let's include QML object list model.h. Now what this is essentially, let me show you. It's a QAbstract list model, and actually I don't think we need this. Never mind. Let's not include this. I'm overthinking it. Yeah. So let's include QList for now, and just do this. QList, and the list would be of QGO coordinates. We'll also have to include QGO coordinate. And we'll just call this POI chords. Well, eventually it'll be some abstract list because we're going to have a class for each point of interest. But for now, all we care about is it storing coordinates. So I don't think we need a signal for it. Let's do Q property, Q list, POI. The list would be of geo coordinates. POI chords. I believe you only need to do this, and then you basically go like this, where you do I believe this actually has to be a pointer as well. I think it's like that. Let's see. Never mind. I don't even think we need to make it a pointer, to be honest. Oh, whoops, we forgot to delete something. Let's just delete this do something, and I think we'll be good then. Let me pause until it finishes. Okay, so it finished and it compiled successfully. But we haven't actually done anything with POI chords, so let's do something with it. Flight map. So I believe QList you do append. Let's go to QList. Yeah. Dot append chord. I think I could have also used a Q vector there, but I used a Q list. Let's see if that works. Oh, I made a obvious mistake, which is I'd never referenced the POI manager. So POI manager dot POI chords dot append chord, I believe, is how you would do it. Oh, and as you can see, I ran into an issue. Property append of object is not a function. I think there is a way to do this, but the way I'm doing it is actually pretty stupid. Instead, I think it would be better to keep this, like, of course, keep this as like constant and everything like that. But instead, what you should do is you should add an invocable here. Add coordinate, then QGO. Then you do like this. I think that's actually just a better way of doing it in general too, because then you don't have to like do something like this, which is silly and also doesn't work. But if it did work, it'd kind of be silly. Yeah, add coordinate. So add coordinate chord. Let's try this. Okay, so that worked, and now I'm adding coordinates to this list, which you could always loop through and print every coordinate if you wanted to. But yeah, whenever I click on something, it's adding it to the list. Now we don't actually see anything happening on the screen because we never added anything for that yet. So let's actually make it so that a circle appears in the screen wherever you click. So I believe, if my memory serves me correct, the way to do that is map item view. Which, if you go to QML types, you can see like every single QML type, and there are like map ones specifically. And if you're adding something to the map, you add them. You have to do these like map types. So, because they automatically will move with the map and do funny stuff like that, you know. So, map item view is very useful because it's used to populate a map from a model. Now, a model is just a list of items that are accessible to QML. So basically, it could be a list of anything, But what map item view basically does is it adds a map item for each like view. If you're familiar with QML, or if you're not, like basically like there's a type called a repeater, and that is like basically like a loop, and it does something for however many items are in a list. Map item view is kind of like a repeater, but specifically for map items, and it specifically tracks like a list of objects. So I mean, it doesn't have to be like a queue list. It could be other things too, but you get my point. So let's just, in this map, let's just at the very top, like add map item view. And let's give it the ID of, oh yeah, these IDs like have to be unique, by the way. So let's give it an ID of like POI points, right? And we need to add a model. So what is the model? It would just be POI manager dot, what do we call it again? Let's see. POI coords. So basically it tracks that list of coordinates. And delegate, which if you use a repeater, it's similar, but delegate basically is what is created for each coordinate. For delegate, let's actually add, instead of doing that, let's make it a map polygon. That's used to display a polygon on the map. So map polygon. And let's make the color QGC. Actually, we could do like red or like that, or you could do like QGC pal dot color red, I believe is one. Does QGC palette have a color red? Yeah, it does. And you can get those QGC specific colors by going to QGC palette.h, and might be in the CC, actually might be easier to find, but all these like are different colors. So like there's a window color, everything like that. If you wanted to add your own color, you basically do it the exact same way that one of these is done. And you can do things the same way I do it, where you just look like color green. How is that, like where is that actually written? Like you can look here too, but there's probably a lot of things that are green, but like color green, this is where it's declared. And these are the RGB values, which are defined by like if it's in light mode or dark mode too. But yeah, sorry, I changed the subject real quickly, but yeah. So we set that to color red. Border dot color. We'll set this to black. Border dot width. We'll make it a 2 pixel wide border. And I think sorry, I actually didn't mean to do map polygon, because map polygon has the idea that basically it's basically following a path to make a big polygon. I didn't want that. Let's do map circle actually, because map circle is a specific point, so this would be more applicable to us. So sorry about that. You could technically make it a polygon if you wanted to, but for this specific use case, you'd make it a circle. Now, I think the ones we set are actually still the same, but now we have center, and I believe like, center, which would be object, and I think object is basically the specific item in this model. So center for this would just be object, which would just be a QGeo coordinate as defined by this right here. So that would just be a QGeo coordinate, and opacity, let's just make it 0.9, so almost completely opaque, but you know, there's a little bit seeing through. Radius, let's set this to screen tools dot default font pixel height times 0.5. I think that'll be good enough. So let's see if that worked. Takes a bit to compile, but oh, it doesn't seem like it worked. Well, let's try to debug this and figure out what's going on. Because when we click on it, nothing happens, but there's no errors as well. Interesting. So you'll find this a lot when you're programming, is that sometimes things just don't work and you have to figure out why that is. Now, the first step of doing this could be to, after we append POI chords, we can go for I equals 0, I is less than POI chords dot size I plus plus, and then just QDebug. Oops, I'm silly. Let's do that. Then you get an error thrown at you. Because you forgot an underscore. Pretty sure it's being appended correctly though, so we're gonna find that that's not the case. That's not actually what is causing it. I think it's because I was not supposed to use object here. Like center should not be object, I don't think. Which if we start clicking on stuff, we'll see that it gets added to the list most likely. So you can see the list is slowly growing. So yeah, it's being added to the list correctly. So I'm thinking this center object is actually is wrong. Let's go back to map item view and see. Or you know what we can do is just look at other map item views. I think object's correct too. Interesting. Oh, I think our Z might be set wrong. Yeah, because every single one sets a Z value. Let's just do Z order topmost. So if we go back to POI manager. Oh, it'll be here. Okay. I think it was because we didn't set a Z value. Let's see. No, that wasn't the case. Give me 1 second. Let me try to figure out the problem. Okay, so I think I figured it out. With QList, you actually do need to notify, like you need an actual property for when things change. So you need a signal. So we do notify POI chords change. So I was wrong. There are certain certain situations where you don't necessarily need a signal, but for this you do. Signals void POI chords changed. So my bad, but you know, you live and you learn. Let's not do that. Let's do emit. So yeah, emit POI chords changed, and I think that's all we need. Now we wait for it to be finished. Now it's telling us object is not defined. Interesting. Yeah, let me look into that as well. Give me a sec. Okay, so yeah, I figured out the issue. So that if you have a map item view, and like what you're, I think you use model data and not objects for your delegates, unless it is something that actually is an object. So yeah, if it's something like this where it's directly like a QGeo coordinate, you just use model data instead. Sometimes QML is a little funny, but yeah. So you can see when we click on it now, our points of interest are being added. Now the radius is quite small, so they're like barely visible. And you know, these specific circles are actually geographically accurate to the size, so that's why they're so small when you zoom out. We want it to probably stay the same size regardless of where it's zoomed, and in that case we cannot use the map circle. Instead, you'd use map quick item, which I believe, where's map quick item? Let's see. Map quick item. It's this, which basically is a generic item that you can put anything inside of it. So map quick item, which, yeah, so you do source item, let's make our source item a rectangle for now. Then we'll just keep some of this stuff. So I believe map quick item, instead of center, it's coordinate. So coordinate model data. Yeah, and then this stuff for rectangle is the same. Let's make our rectangle actually a circle. So radius 0.5, that'll make it a circle. Let's add a z value just in case. I think that's all we need. Let's remove this. Let's see what is created. I think we forgot to set our size. My bad. Width, screen, tools, .default font, pixel width, times 2. Let's set height the same as width. Yeah, if it creates a, or if it won't show anything because there's no width or height, but once we are done with this, most likely we'll show something. Also, as a note, if you create a lot of map items, it can cause performance issues. So if you have something where you need a lot of map items, you most likely want to do some optimization stuff where they're loaded in dynamically. But we won't go into that this video. But yeah, I guess the radius was not set correctly, but as you can see, they're staying the same size regardless of how far we zoom out now. So that's pretty good. And obviously, this is really annoying because every time you click, it's creating an item. We want to eventually make it so that, you know, the user like either right clicks or maybe points and holds, and then eventually like it'll give them the option to add a point of interest. But this is just showing off like, we have a class in C++, and something is called to add a coordinate to like a list, and that is reflected in QML, and that's pretty cool. I think like radius of 1 equals circle. We'll see. No, I think the radius actually has to be the width. Width divided by 2. So I'm going a little bit crazy, but I'll get there eventually. Just want to make it a circle before the video ends. There we go. Beautiful. Man, I don't like how new Qt, in old Qt when you used to zoom in, it would zoom to the point that you're actually like pointed on, like that your mouse is pointed to, but it's not doing that in newer QGroundControl. But this master version is actively changing, so that's stuff like that's kind of expected. Yeah, you see we're making circles. Beautiful. And yeah, that's basically it with this video. Thank you.